So today is Vamanadeva. This is which is the anniversary of the day on which Krishna appeared in his incarnation of Vamanadeva, also called Trivikrama and Upendra. So as we know, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Paritranaya sadanam vanashaya chadushkritam dhamma samstapanatya sambhavami yuge yuge. I appear to annihilate the demons and to protect my devotees. So Krishna appeared in the form of Vamanadeva to protect or to please or to reciprocate with the prayers of his devotee Aditi and to rid the world of the demoniac forces who had usurped the demigods at that particular time. So there's a song written by Jayadev Goswami, who was a great devotee of Krishna, who lived several hundred years before the appearance of Lord Chaitanya. And it's called Sri Dashavatara Stotra, so it's 10 verses glorifying Krishna in his various incarnations, one of which is the Nrsimha prayers that we sing every morning. And another one is glorifying Lord Vamanadeva, which is verse 5 of this song. So the translation is, O Keshava, O Lord of the universe, O Lord Hari, who have assumed the form of a dwarf Brahman, all glories to you. O wonderful dwarf, by your massive steps you deceive King Bali, and by the Ganges water that has emanated from the nails of your lotus feet, you deliver all living beings within this world. So you can just join in on the last line. Keshavadrita Vamana Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare. We'll sing it a few times. And then at the end we'll sing Jaya Vamanadeva. Sorry?
It's there on the screen.
Okay. Chalayasi Vikramane Balimadbhuta Vamana Padanaka Nirajanita Janapavana Keshavadrita Vamana Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Chalayasi Vikramane Balimadbhuta Vamana Padanaka Nirajanita Janapavana Keshavadrita Vamana Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Chalayasi Vikramane Balimadbhuta Vamana Padanaka Nirajanita Janapavana Keshavadrita Vamana Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Chalayasi Vikramane Balimadbhuta Vamana Padanaka Nirajanita Janapavana Keshavadrita Vamana Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare, Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Chalayasi Vikramane Balimadruta Vamana Padanaka Nirajanita Jana Pavana Keshavadrita Vamana Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare, Jaya Jagadisha Hare, Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Jaya Vamanadeva, Jaya Vamanadeva, Vamanadeva, Jaya Vamanadeva. Jaya Vamanadeva, Jaya Vamanadeva, Vamanadeva, Sri Vamanadeva. Recording of Srila Prabhupada singing this 10 verses, or 12 verses, I think. And yes, 12 verses. Several recordings of Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada very much liked these prayers. And so, sometimes on appearance days he would sing the particular verse relevant to that incarnation. So I'll read from Srila Prabhupada's Leelamrita. I have done my part. Prabhupada said that if the Gurukul was successful and if ISKCON got more standing in the future, the government could take guidance from ISKCON and not allow people to cheat, claiming to be a Brahmin or Kshatriya without the training. These things are now a dream, Prabhupada admitted, but it should be done. I am thinking of so many things, but my life is ending, so keep these ideas, you especially, because you are young men. July brought the rainy season to Vrindavan. The clouds began building from the beginning of the month, and by mid-July it would be raining daily. The perfumed odor of the kadamba flower was heavy in the air, and after a rain, the neem blossoms would give off their onion-like aroma. The peacocks with their full feathered tails became ecstatic, dancing, cooing and calling. Sometimes a sudden rainstorm would come even while Srila Prabhupada was sitting on his bed or at his dictating desk in an unsheltered part of the veranda, and his servants would rush out to move him inside as quickly as possible. Sometimes when rain prevented his using the garden, he would recline instead on the little porch overlooking the garden. But at least the 120 degree heat was broken, and the days became more bearable. Prabhupada quietly rested and continued his day's routine, waiting to see what Krishna desired. He would often wake about 6 a.m. and open his eyes to see Tamal Krishna at his bedside. He would then extend his hands, indicating that he wanted to sit up in bed. Tamal Krishna or another servant would then lightly stroke Srila Prabhupada's back while Srila Prabhupada spoke his mind. Very few devotees were visiting Vrindavan, and guests were rarely allowed to see Prabhupada. His health was not improving, nor did it seem to be at a crisis point, as it had been in May. But because he was hardly eating anything, he was not building his strength. His main treatment consisted of hearing kirtan, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Chaitanya Charitamrita. Srila Prabhupada ki. Yeah. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading today from the 8th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam about the appearance and activities of Krishna in his incarnation as Vamanadeva. And I just before I read that, I just want to read a verse from the 1st canto. So there's a few verses actually. So the sages at Naimisharanya, they select Shaunaka Rishi to be their representative, and he addresses Sutta Goswami, and he says, all blessings upon you, O Sutta Goswami. You know for what purpose the personality of Godhead appeared in the womb of Devaki as the son of Vasudeva. O Sutta Goswami, we are eager to learn about the personality of Godhead and its incarnations. Please explain to us those teachings imparted by previous masters, for one is uplifted both by speaking them and by hearing them. O Sutta, who is there desiring deliverance from the vices of the age of quarrel, who is not willing to hear the virtuous glories of the Lord? His transcendental acts are magnificent and gracious, and great learned sages like Narada sing of them. Please therefore speak to us who are eager to hear about the adventures he performs in his various incarnations. O wise Sutta, please narrate to us the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Godhead's multi-incarnations. Such auspicious adventures and pastimes of the Lord, the Supreme Controller, are performed by his internal powers. So you can see here that the sages, they want to hear about all of Krishna's different avatars and incarnations. They're excited. They're excited that they have the audience of Sutta Goswami who has this knowledge. So Sutta Goswami reciprocates by giving very, very long descriptions of the various different avatars, especially of the pastime of Lord Nrsingadev, of Prithu Maharaj, and of Vamanadeva. All these three avatars, they occupy approximately like 8 or 9 chapters each. So we haven't got time to read all 8 chapters, but I'm going to try to do a whole overview of Lord Vamanadeva's appearance. So we're starting on Canto 8, Chapter 16. The pastime starts in the previous chapter, actually, which is called Bali Maharaj Conquers the Heavenly Planets. And in that chapter, then Brihaspati, who's the spiritual master of the demigods, he tells the demigods that although you have more mystic powers than the asuras, and normally you would be able to defeat Bali Maharaj, but because Bali Maharaj has been blessed by very powerful Brahmins, on this occasion you won't be able to defeat him. So therefore Brihaspati advises that the demigods go into hiding. Not that they have to go and live in caves. They've got mystic powers, so they can go into hiding. It means they can just disguise themselves. But that they shouldn't attempt to defeat the asuras. So because of this, then Bali Maharaj, then the throne of Indra in the heavenly planets becomes vacant, and Bali Maharaj establishes himself along with all of his followers on the throne of Indra and enjoys the opulences of the heavenly planets. So this creates great distress in the mind of Aditi. Aditi is the mother of all of the major demigods. so she's very distressed, and her husband Kashyapa Muni understands that distress. So he advises her to perform a yagya called the Payoff process of worship, which was taught to Kashyapa by Lord Brahma, and she very diligently observes this process. So which is the verse on here now?
8:17:4.
Okay, so having performed this Payoff process of worship, then so it's said that Shukadev Goswami said, "O King, after Aditi was thus advised by her husband Kashyapa Muni, she strictly followed his instructions without laziness, and in this way performed the Payoff ritualistic ceremony. With full undiverted attention, Aditi thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and in this way brought under full control her mind and senses, which resembled forceful horses. She concentrated her mind upon the Supreme Lord Vasudeva. Thus she performed the ritualistic ceremony known as Payovrata." So now we're going to now text Canto 8, Chapter 17, Text 4. Have I said the invocation yet? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tasya Pradurabhut Tata. Tasya Pradurabhut Tata. Bhagavan Adi Purusha. Bhagavan Adi Purusha. Pita Vasash Chatubahu. Pita Vasash Chatubahu. Shankar Chakra Gada Dara. Shankar Chakra Gada Dara. Tasya Pradurabhutata. Bhagavan Adi Purusha. Pitavashash Chatubahu. Shankar Chakra Gadadara. Tasya Pradurabhutata. Bhagavan Adi Purusha. Pitavashash Chatubahu. Shankar Chakra Gadadara. Oh no.
Bhagavani Purusha, Pita Vashashchaturbahu, Shankar Chakra Gadadara, Tasya Pradurabhutata, Bhagavan Adi Purusha, Pita Vashashchaturbahu, Shankar Chakra Gadadara.
Vaishnavis.
Tasya Pradurabhutata, Bhagavan Adi Purusha, Itavashastatubahu. Shankachakradharu.
Vasyarapadura Pushkata Bhagavanadi Purusha Pitavashashatubahu Shankar Chakra Gadadhara.
Sure. Sorry, I've lost the place again. What's the verse?
It's fourth verse, chapter 17.
Chapter 17, verse 4.
Yes.
Tasya, before her, Pradurabhut appeared. Tata, my dear King, Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Adi Purusha, the original person, Pitavasa, dressed in yellow garments, Chaturbahu, with 4 arms, Shankachakra Gadadhara, bearing the conch shell, disc, club, and lotus flower. Translation. My dear King, the original Supreme Personality of Godhead, dressed in yellow garments, and bearing a conch shell, disc, club, and lotus in his 4 hands, then appeared before Aditi. Please repeat. My dear King, the original Supreme Personality of Godhead, dressed in yellow garments, and bearing a conch shell, disc, club, and lotus in his 4 hands, then appeared before Aditi. I'm just going to continue reading these verses. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead became visible to Aditi's eyes, Aditi was so overwhelmed by transcendental bliss that she at once stood up and then fell to the ground like a rod to offer the Lord her respectful obeisances. Aditi stood silently with folded hands, unable to offer prayers to the Lord. Because of transcendental bliss, tears filled her eyes and the hairs on her body stood on end. Because she could see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face, she felt ecstasy and her body trembled. O Maharaj Parikshit, the demigoddess Aditi then began offering prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in a faltering voice and with great love. She appeared as though drinking through her eyes the Supreme Lord, who is the husband of the goddess of fortune, the enjoyer of all sacrificial ceremonies, and the master and lord of the entire universe. Shri Aditya Vacha Yagyesha Yagya Purusha Chitatita Pada Tiyata Shava Shavana Mangala Namadeha Apana Loka Vijinopa Shamoda Dyadya Shangna Kridisha Bhagavan Asinti Nanata. The goddess Aditi said, O master and enjoyer of all sacrificial ceremonies, O infallible and most famous person whose name when chanted spreads all good fortune, O original Supreme Personality of Godhead, Supreme Controller, shelter of all holy places, you are the shelter of all poor suffering living entities, and you have appeared to diminish their suffering. Please be kind to us and spread our good fortune. My Lord, you are the all-pervading universal form, the fully independent creator, maintainer, and destroyer of this universe. Although you engage your energy in matter, you are always situated in your original form and will never fall from that position. For your knowledge is infallible and always suitable to any situation. You are never bewildered by illusion. O my Lord, let me offer my respectful obeisances unto you. O unlimited one, if your lordship is satisfied, one can very easily obtain a lifetime as long as that of Lord Brahma, a body either in the upper, lower, or middle planetary systems, unlimited material opulence, religion, economic development and satisfaction of the senses, full transcendental knowledge, and the 8 yogic perfections, what to speak of such petty achievements as conquering one's rivals? So then the Supreme Lord answers Aditi and expresses that he understands exactly why she's desired his presence. He understands that her sons, the demigods, have lost their opulence and no longer are living in the heavenly planets. And he also explains that the reason that they have lost their good fortune is because Bali Maharaj has been protected by Brahmins, whom the Supreme Lord always favors. So then it's described then Kashyapa Muni, the husband of Aditi, he became situated in a meditational trance, and he could see that a plenary portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead had entered within him. O King, as the wind promotes friction between two pieces of wood and thus gives rise to fire, Kashyapa Muni, whose transcendental position was fully absorbed in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, transferred his potency into the womb of Aditi. And then Lord Brahma offered prayers to Lord Vamanadeva in the womb of Aditi. And then Shukadev Goswami said, after Lord Brahma had thus spoken, glorifying the Supreme Lord's activities and prowess, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who was never subject to death like an ordinary living being, appeared from the womb of Aditi. His 4 hands were decorated with a conch shell, club, lotus, and disc. He was dressed in yellow garments, and his eyes appeared like the petals of a blooming lotus. The body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, blackish in complexion, was free from all inebrities. His lotus feet, decorated with earrings resembling sharks, appeared very beautiful, and on his bosom was the mark of Srivatsa. He wore bangles on his wrists, armlets on his arms, a helmet on his head, a belt on his waist, a sacred thread across his chest, and ankle bells decorating his lotus feet. And then all of the demigods came to offer their obeisances to Lord Vamanadeva, and they offered many gifts, very opulent gifts like Lord Brahma offered a water pot, the 7 sages offered him kushagrash, and Mother Saraswati gave him a string of rudraksha beads. Kuvera gave him a pot for begging alms, and Mother Bhagavati, the wife of Lord Shiva, gave him his first alms. And then Lord Vamanadeva himself, he actually lit a sacrificial fire, and he offered worship to himself in that fire. So then, when Lord Vamanadeva heard that Bali Maharaj was performing Ashvamedha sacrifices under the patronage of Brahmins belonging to the Bhrigu dynasty, the Supreme Lord, who was full in every respect, proceeded there to show his mercy to Bali Maharaj. By his weight, he pushed down the earth with every step. While engaged in performing the sacrifice in the field known as Bhrigu Kacha on the northern bank of the Narmada River, the Brahminical priests, the descendants of Bhrigu, saw Vamanadeva to be like the sun rising nearby. O king, because of Vamanadev's bright effulgence, the priests, along with Bali Maharaj and all the members of the assembly, were robbed of their splendor. Thus they began to ask one another whether the sun god himself, Sanat Kumar, or the fire god, had personally come to see the sacrificial assembly. While the priests of the Bhrigu dynasty and their disciples talked and argued in various ways, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vamanadeva, holding in his hands the rod, the umbrella, and a water pot full of water, entered the arena of the Ashvamedha sacrifice. So the reason that Lord Vamanadeva has this name Vamana is because this Vamanadeva is called the dwarf incarnation. And sometimes there's a biological condition whereby people are born with very short legs and like kind of slightly deformed limbs. But it's not that Lord Krishna appeared in that form. His body was perfectly proportioned, but he never grew any taller than like a young boy. He was always a brahmachari throughout his life, just a little bit like the four Kumaras. But he had sublime beauty. He was like exceptionally beautiful. So this is why he's called the dwarf incarnation. And it's also, he wasn't easily recognizable as the Supreme Lord even by very elevated Brahmins, because he just appeared like a young brahmachari. Appearing as a Brahmin boy, wearing a belt of straw, a sacred thread, an upper garment of deerskin, and matted locks of hair, Lord Vamanadeva entered the arena of sacrifice. His brilliant effulgence diminished the brilliance of all the priests and their disciples, who thus stood from their seats and welcomed the Lord properly by offering obeisances. Bali Maharaj, jubilant at seeing Lord Vamanadeva, whose beautiful limbs contributed equally to the beauty of his entire body, offered him a seat with great satisfaction. Thus offering a proper reception to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who was always beautiful to the liberated souls, Bali Maharaj worshipped him by washing his lotus feet. Lord Shiva, the best of demigods, who carries on his forehead the emblem of the moon, receives on his head with great devotion the Ganges water emanating from the toe of Vishnu. Being aware of religious principles, Bali Maharaj knew this. Consequently, following in the footsteps of Lord Shiva, he also placed on his head the water that had washed the Lord's lotus feet. Bali Maharaj then said to the Lord Vamanadeva, O Brahman, I offer you my hearty welcome and my respectful obeisances. Please let us know what we may do for you. We think of you as the personified austerity of the great Brahmin sages. O my Lord, because you have kindly arrived at our home, all my forefathers are satisfied. Our family and entire dynasty have been sanctified, and the sacrifice we are performing is now complete because of your presence. O son of a Brahmin, today the fire of sacrifice is ablaze, according to the injunction of the Shastra, and I have been freed from all the sinful reactions of my life by the water that has washed your lotus feet. O my Lord, by the touch of your small lotus feet, the entire surface of the world has been sanctified. O son of a Brahmin, it appears that you have come here to ask me for something. Therefore, whatever you want, you may take from me. O best of those who are worshipable, you may take from me a cow, gold, a furnished house, palatable food and drink, the daughter of a Brahmin for your wife, prosperous villages, horses, elephants, chariots, or whatever you desire. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vamanadeva, heard Balimraj speaking in this pleasing way, he was very satisfied, for Balimraj had spoken in terms of religious principles. Thus the Lord began to praise him. Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O King, you are indeed exalted because your present advisors are the Brahmins, who are descendants of Bhrigu, and because your instructor for your future life is your grandfather, the peaceful and venerable Prahlad Maharaj. Your statements are very true, and they completely agree with religious etiquette. They are in keeping with the behavior of your family, and they enhance your reputation. Purport by Srila Prabhupada ki. Prahlad Maharaj is a vivid example of a pure devotee. Someone might argue that since Prahlad Maharaj, even though very old, was attached to his family and specifically to his grandson Bali Maharaj, how could he be an ideal example? Therefore, this verse uses the word prashanta. A devotee is always sober. He is never disturbed by any conditions. Even if a devotee remains in grihastha life and does not renounce material possessions, he should still be understood to be prashanta, sober, because of his pure devotion to the Lord. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore said, Kiba vipra kiba nyasi shudra kena nai, ye Krishna tattva veta se guru hoy. Whether one is a Brahman, a sannyasi, or a Shudra, regardless of what he is, he can become a spiritual master if he knows the science of Krishna. Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila 8.1-8. Anyone completely aware of the science of Krishna, regardless of his status in life, is a guru. Thus Prahlad Maharaj is a guru in all circumstances. Here his lordship Vamanadeva also teaches sannyasis and brahmacharis that one should not ask more than necessary. He wanted only 3 paces of land, although Bali Maharaj wanted to give him anything he wanted. So this is Vamanadeva continuing to speak to Bali Maharaj. I know that even until now, no one taking birth in your family has been poor-minded or miserly. No one has refused to give charity to Brahmins, nor after promising to give charity has anyone failed to fulfill his promise. O King Bali, never in your dynasty has the low-minded king been born, who upon being requested has refused charity to Brahmins in holy places, or a fight to Kshatriyas on a battlefield. And your dynasty is even more glorious due to the presence of Prahlad Maharaj, who is like the beautiful moon in the sky. It is in your dynasty that Hiranyaksha was born. Carrying only his own club, he wandered the globe alone without assistance to conquer all directions, and no hero he met could rival him. Your father, Virochana, the son of Prahlad Maharaj, was very affectionate toward Brahmins, although he knew very well that it was the demigods who had come to him in the dress of Brahmins. At their request, he delivered to them the duration of his life. You also have observed the principles followed by great personalities who are householder Brahmins, by your forefathers and by great heroes who are extremely famous for their exalted activities. O King of the Daityas, from your majesty, who come from such a noble family and who are able to give charity munificently, I ask only 3 paces of land to the measurement of my steps. O King, controller of the entire universe, although you are very munificent, and are able to give me as much land as I want. I do not want anything from you that is unnecessary. If a learned Brahmana takes charity from others only according to his needs, he does not become entangled in sinful activities. Maharaj said, "Oh, son of a Brahmin, your instructions are as good as those of learned and elderly persons. Nevertheless, you are a boy, and your intelligence is insufficient. Thus, you are not very prudent in regard to your self-interest." So it appears that at this point, Bali Maharaj, actually, although he's glorifying Lord Vamanadeva, it appears that he's glorifying him as a pure brahmachari, a pure Brahmin. And this is when he says that the water from your lotus feet sanctifies the entire planet. This was actually the level of respect given by the kings to the Brahmins. That, the king is a pious king, considered even a very poor Brahmin to be like worthy of all worship and respect. So here Bali Maharaj says, "O son of a Brahmin, your instructions are as good as those of learned and elderly persons. Nonetheless, you are a boy, and your intelligence is insufficient. Thus, you are not very prudent in regard to your self-interest. I am able to give you an entire island, because I am the proprietor of the 3 divisions of the universe. You have come to take something from me, and have pleased me by your sweet words, but you are asking only 3 paces of land. Therefore, you are not very intelligent. O small boy, one who approaches me to beg something should not have to ask anything more anywhere. Therefore, if you wish, you may ask from me as much land as will suffice to maintain you according to your needs." The personality of Godhead said, "O my dear king, even the entirety of whatever there may be within the 3 worlds to satisfy one's senses cannot satisfy a person whose senses are uncontrolled." It's very similar to a verse spoken by Prahlad to his father, Hiranyakashipu. Does anyone remember that verse that Prahlad spoke to his father? That's right, roughly, can you remember it?
Kind of the same as that, isn't it? All these material assets are of no value compared to devotional service.
He was one who's not able to control his senses, can never be happy, even if he possesses the 3 worlds. He's talking to his father. His father, Hiranyakashipu, gets really upset with him because he's like Prahlad's saying, even though you're the most powerful person in the universe, or you think you are, you can't be happy because you can't control your senses. Vamanadeva continues, "If I were not satisfied with 3 paces of land, then surely I would not be satisfied even with possessing one of the 7 islands consisting of 9 Varshas. Even if I possessed 1 island, I would hope to get others. We have heard that although powerful kings like Maharaj Prithu and Gaya achieved proprietorship over the 7 dweepas, they could not achieve satisfaction or find the end of their ambitions. One should be satisfied with whatever he achieves by his previous destiny, for discontent can never bring happiness. A person who is not self-controlled will not be happy even with possessing the 3 worlds." That's almost identical to... so it's actually throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam and throughout the Vedic literature, we find that statements are repeated over and over again, and also pastimes are repeated over and over again. And the atheists use this as an argument, and that this proves that the Shastras are recently composed, and that they're not of divine origin, because they're just kind of like the same instructions kind of divided up into different stories for different people. This is the argument of most so-called Indologists, people who study Indian literature, and especially like persons who are trying to bring down the value of the Vedic literature. And in one sense, what they say is true. It is actually true that is the nature of the Vedas, but it's not that is the plan of some kind of very powerful dynasty who wanted to subjugate the poor, ignorant people by writing the Vedas in such a way that they felt intimidated and felt like they had to follow them, otherwise they'd go to hell. No, but it's because the Vedas are actually emanations from the breathing of Krishna. The Vedas are actually a manifestation of Krishna's mercy upon all living entities. And because Krishna knows that certain adventures and certain kind of leelas are very, very attractive, and he performs them again and again, and he gives the same instructions again and again. So it's very interesting, actually, that the same information or the same kind of media, you would describe it as media, the same kind of media presentation can be interpreted completely differently by someone who is honest and compassionate and introspective. They see it in a way, what is this very nice person trying to communicate to me? And somebody who's envious and somebody who's very much addicted to sense gratification, they see it as, who's behind this? Which kind of like manipulative person is trying to manipulate me? So when we're reading the Shastra, we have to be careful that we don't fall into that trap of viewing it through the eyes of cynical critics, because especially those of us who've, been into higher education, textual analysis, different ways of analyzing history, political analysis, then we've been exposed to that very cynical, atheistic way of interpreting literature or interpreting political agendas, and actually unknowingly we will apply it to Shastra. My personal experience is that I'm definitely aware that I've done that throughout my devotional life, and it's created doubts. But the way those doubts have been destroyed is just by reading more and more and more and more of Srila Prabhupada's books and the books of his disciples, and especially my Guru Maharaj Shiva Ramaraj in his Vrajadam Mahima and other books. He actually addresses all of the different kind of criticisms that atheistic scholars direct towards Shastra. And he actually answers them from Shastra. He uses Shastra to show that all of these apparently contradictory statements of Shastra are not contradictory. And that if you actually study Shastra with enough depth and determination, then you will actually find the answers to all of your questions. So now I'm just going to, it's 8:30 now, so not surprising I didn't come to the end of the pastime. But I'll just quickly give a summary of the rest of the pastime. So Lord Vamanadeva, who's Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he's actually come to bless his devotee, Bali Maharaj. But he's blessing him by taking away everything. Like Bali's a little bit proud of his opulence. He says, I'm the controller of the three worlds. Okay, so Krishna says, okay, so you're the controller of the three worlds. Okay, so you're going to give the three worlds to me. So he's only asked for 3 steps of land, and he's just a little boy. And at this point, Bali Maharaj just sees him as a beautiful Brahmin boy. So with his first step, he covers like the material. He covers kind of like this planet and the heavenly planets, like that. All of like, and then with the second step, he covers like the whole of the all of the material universes, not just this universe, but all of the universes. And then he actually chastises Bali Maharaj by saying, you promised to give me 3 steps and you can't even give me 2 steps because although you may be the controller of this universe now for a short period of time, you're not the controller of all of the universes. It says, therefore, although you are so proud of being charitable and you're so proud to be able to fulfill your promise to the Brahmins, and by being so proud, you might commit offenses to other people who perhaps haven't got that ability, but now you're a hypocrite. Although you're thinking that you're so great, you can't even give me 2 steps, let alone 3 steps. And then Krishna actually punishes him, like he ties him up with these like mystical ropes. They're called the ropes of Varuna. And he like embarrasses him in front of all of his like followers and soldiers and ministers. He just ties him up as if he's just like a criminal. And he tells him, I'm going to send you down to Sutala, which is like a planet in the lower regions of the universe. And but through all of this humiliation, Bali Maharaj actually, he understands now that this is my Lord, this is my worshipful Lord. And he's so humble actually at heart that he accepts all of this chastisement. And so then Lord Vamanadeva says, where can I put my 3rd step? Where can I put my 3rd step? And there's nowhere for him to put his 3rd step because he's already covered the entire cosmic creation. So Bali Maharaj says, please put your 3rd step on my head. And so, Vamanadeva is very pleased to do so, to put his feet on the head of Bali Maharaj. So it's a very wonderful story. So today, if you have any time, perhaps what you could do is you can read the introduction to all of the chapters, which is usually just like about 1 page. Just read the introduction to all the chapters, and then you'll understand the whole story. And what you can also do is you can go to the very end. Go to the very end of the pastime, which is, I'll tell you where it is, and then you'll know when you've finished, because it's like, it's actually, it goes on to chapter 23. It goes right on to chapter 23. So I'll just read the last 2 verses of chapter 23. If one hears about the uncommon activities of the personality of Godhead in his various incarnations, he is certainly elevated to the higher planetary systems, or even brought back to Godhead. Wherever the activities of Vamanadeva are described in the course of a ritualistic ceremony, whether the ceremony be performed to please the demigods, to please one's forefathers in Pitraloka, or to celebrate a social event like a marriage, that ceremony should be understood to be extremely auspicious. Shri Vamanadeva ki, Shri Bali Maharaj ki, Granth Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Nitai Gaur Premananda. Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda ki jai.